Now that we've covered the health and safety aspects of cooking, we're going to move on to nutrition, where we'll talk about the food groups, servings, and serving sizes, and what exactly a serving is. So first, let's start with our 5 major food groups. You've known these since what, kindergarten? They are fruits, vegetables, grain, protein, and dairy. And then there's kind of that 6th unofficial food group of sugars and oils. We'll get to those guys in just a sec. Now, in order to earn your merit badge, you must be able to identify to your counselor 5 examples of each of the food groups. I'm not going to give this to you because that would be a bit of a waste of time. And I'm sure you can think of 5 fruits and 5 grains. Alright? Okay. So, one of the requirements asks you to explain why you need to limit your oils and sugar intake. Now, if you're doing something like rock climbing or hiking or some intense physical activity, you want sugars and oils. Oils are mostly made of complex carbohydrates. That means that they're really hard to break down and they have a lot of energy stored in them. That means that they're really good to have in you when you're doing intense activities. There are also some good oils. Any of the omega-3 fatty acids, omega-3, omega-6, omega-9, and I think there's an omega-12. Any of those are really good and help your brain to work a bit faster. However, there are also those bad oils, usually referred to as fats. Those create lots of buildup in your body, and ultimately they make you really unhealthy, and they're just not good to have in you, especially if you don't work out a lot. So that's the rundown of limiting sugars and oils. Now back to our 5 food groups and servings. So what exactly is a serving? A serving is how much of a certain food is required to gain the caloric benefits. As you can see on any food label, it says serving size. Now this almost always depends on what food group it's under. Some of the servings will say 1 cup, some of them will say half a cup. So servings are really important, and if you don't pay attention to servings, then you could end up eating too much of something in a day or not enough, which could cause malnutrition. And that is really, really bad, because that means that your body's not getting all the nutrients it needs. So now we're going to talk about the serving size for each of the 5 food groups, starting with fruit. The serving size is about 1 cup. And this can be a cup of any fruit. That's a cup of grapes, a cup of dried cranberries. Both of those are 1 cup of fruit, and that is 1 serving. Now the recommended amount of fruit that you need to have each day is 1/2 to 2 cups. Doesn't sound like a lot, but trust me when I say that is a lot of vitamins and minerals and even a few necessary carbohydrates that you need. Where you get into more nutrients is when you talk about vegetables. Like fruit, vegetables have the recommended serving size of 1 cup. However, you need to be getting at least 1 to 3 cups of fruit. Now I give you these ranges because they vary based on 2 things, age and gender. For example, someone like me is going to require a bit less fruit and vegetable than someone who's 19 to 31 and is also a male. On the other hand, I will require more fruit and vegetables than a toddler or someone who's 4 to 6. With that quick aside out of the way, we're going to talk about grains. So grains are a serving size of 1 ounce equivalent. And what does that look like? Well, an ounce equivalent is about 1 slice of bread or a half a cup of cereal. The recommended number of grains you need to get each day is anywhere from 3 to 8 ounces. Grains provide a lot of the complex carbohydrates, in particular fiber. Fiber helps clean out your bloodstream, which is really nice for maintaining a nice, healthy heart rate. However, they don't always provide the longest storage energy. That's where proteins come in. Like grains, the protein serving size is 1 ounce equivalent, which is 1 ounce of steak, 1 egg, to give a couple examples. For protein, you need to be getting 2 to 6.5 equivalent ounces a day. Dairy's serving size is 1 cup, and you need to be getting about 2 to 3 cups of dairy a day, depending on, age, gender, stuff like that. Finally, I'm going to touch on the oil serving size and recommended number. Oils, the serving size is 1 teaspoon. That's not a whole lot. And the recommended number of servings is 3 to 7 teaspoons a day. So like I said, not a lot of oils compared to any of the other food groups. Alright, so I can't give you requirements 2C and 2D in this video. You guys need to do that on your own. What that entails is going on myplate.gov and planning out a meal plan for yourself based on your personal needs and exercise. I can't really do that. What I can help you do is understand those pesky food labels. We're going to go through an entire food label right here for a brand of almond milk. So let's start at the top with calories. So a calorie is a unit of heat or energy. Specifically, how much energy it takes to raise 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius. So that means that there's a lot of energy stored in food. Even more, as you see, this particular brand of almond milk has 60 calories in 1 cup. But that's not 60 joules. That is 60 kilojoules, or 60,000 joules. Because calories in food are measured in a unit called the kilocalorie. Because an actual calorie is pretty small. You'll also notice calories from fat. That means how much of the energy in a food comes directly from fat. But what is fat? Well, fats are nice, long carbon-hydrogen chains. And sometimes fats are really good. Omegas, like the omega-3 and omega-6s, they are really good at helping increase brain processing speed. They're what's known as the good fats. However, what we typically think of as fat, and what's usually put on the food labels, are what are known as bad fats. Namely, saturated and trans fat. Saturated fats are harder to break apart than most fats. And you may think that's good because they store a lot of energy, but it also means that they take up a lot of space. When people say that they want to burn off fat, they're usually talking about saturated fat that they want to burn off. Back to fat as a whole for a bit. Fat is excellent at storing energy for long periods of time. And that's why you see people who are going to run triathlons or do really long backpacking trips. You'll see them take a high-fat diet as opposed to something like a high-carb or a high-protein diet. More on those two in a bit. However, saturated fat, when it breaks apart, doesn't really help. The good news is saturated fat pretty much only comes from animal products or things that humans make. So, good news, you don't have to worry about saturated fat in a lot of products like fruits and vegetables. bad news is sometimes humans get a bit trigger happy on the fat board, and we have successfully managed to create a fat that is completely artificial and takes exponentially longer to burn off because our bodies don't know how to break it down. What am I talking about? Trans fat. Trans fats are very rare, but if you see them at all on a food label, stay clear of trans fat. Like seriously, I don't care how good that donut looks. If it says 1 gram trans fat, stay clear. You do not want trans fat. Trans fat is more likely to give you heart problems because it doesn't burn off as easily as saturated or other kinds of fats. So just stay clear of it for me, will you? Speaking of heart problems, now we're going to talk about cholesterol. So our bodies naturally make cholesterol, as do all other animals. So intaking cholesterol isn't really a problem. Our bodies can handle cholesterol in small quantities. In fact, we kind of have it, but that's only in small quantities. Once we start getting into large quantities, we start blocking arteries and veins. And that can be especially deadly if a nice huge chunk of cholesterol gets lodged in the heart, and that's one of the major causes of heart attacks. So that's why you have blood cholesterol checks at the doctor, because they want to make sure that your veins and arteries aren't getting blocked. Fats and cholesterol, or the bad fats in cholesterol rather, are 2 major causes of high blood pressure and are more likely to give you heart attacks. There's one other thing on a nutrition label that is going to make you more likely for a heart attack, and that's sodium. Sodium here, well, sodium just in general, you kind of need to understand that sodium is an electrolyte. Sodium is awesome if you're on a trail or running. You want sodium because you sweat off a lot of sodium. Sodium is one of the major components in salt, so that's why if you ever taste your sweat, it tastes salty. But if you have too much sodium, you start having high blood pressure, and again, put yourself at a higher risk for heart attacks. Really bad. The other electrolyte that they sometimes put on the nutritional label is potassium. Same deal as sodium, really. Both sodium and potassium are used in transmitting electrical signals down your nervous system through sodium-potassium channels. Interesting enough. In fact, this nutrition label does have both sodium and potassium. Moving right along down, we have carbohydrates. Carbs are your short-term energy. Carbs are defined into really 2 big categories. You have your simple carbohydrates and you have your complex carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates are much more difficult to break down. They're usually found in things like grains. They have much more energy than a simple carbohydrate, but they also take a bit longer to break down. And usually, when you break down a complex carb, you're trying to break it into those simple carbs. Dietary fiber is an excellent example of a complex carbohydrate. You don't really break down fiber that much. So why do you need to intake fiber? Well, fiber is excellent at cleaning out your bloodstream and your digestive system. Which is why after eating apples, after eating a ton of apples, you may need to go to the restroom a lot more than you normally do. That's a good thing. That means that you're cleaning out a lot of your system. It also helps maintain low blood cholesterol levels. So if you feel like you have a high cholesterol diet, you might want to start eating some more apples or pears, or, I don't know, other high-fibered foods. Now for sugars, these are your simple carbs. They're kind of your basic unit of energy in the body, especially sugar. Sugar, let's face it, your body likes sugar, and that's not just because it's super sweet, it's also because sugar is kind of your basic unit of energy, and also what every biology class will have you do problems involving energy in the body with. But you'll get to that in about 9th grade. Alright, our final thing that we have to talk about is protein, and it's probably one of the more misunderstood nutrients as to why we need it. A lot of people assume that protein builds muscle. In fact, the only way to actually build muscle is to go out and do exercise. So then why do we want protein? Protein is excellent at helping to repair your body. It also is your hair. Your hair is a type of protein. Your fingernails and toenails are a type of protein. In fact, protein is so useful that you only need a small portion of it. Your body does not naturally manufacture or store protein, which is why you need to intake protein every day. And that's why you hear people say, you gotta have your protein every single day. It's not because of muscles, but it's because it's so necessary to helping repair and grow the body, and your body can't store it. So that's protein for you. Alright, so that is the main part of the nutrition label. Below that is all the percent daily values for various vitamins. As you can see, some of them are in larger quantities than others. Some of them aren't in the food, they're just required by the government to put them on there. Now, there's a couple things that you need to understand, is that this is only one serving, as you can see right at the top. And there are 8 servings of this in the entire bottle or carton of almond milk. So let's say you drank 2 cups. You're going to need to do a bit of math. So that means that instead of getting 8 carbohydrates total, you're really getting 16, which is really 6% of your percent daily value. Instead of getting 45% of your daily intake of calcium, you're really getting 90% of your daily calcium intake. So this is good to know, especially when you can do math. And that is the entirety of requirement 2, assuming you did 2C and 2D on your own.